The unwanted gift. Marcus Chen stood at the observation deck of the transport vessel, watching as the massive space station grew larger through the reinforced viewport. The Stellar Confederation headquarters was a marvel of engineering that dwarfed anything humanity had ever constructed. Crystalline spires twisted through space for kilometers, connected by gleaming tubes that pulsed with energy. Ships from dozens of different species docked at various ports, their designs ranging from elegant curves to geometric impossibilities that seemed to defy physics. The human delegation was small compared to the entourages from other worlds. Marcus led a team of 5 specialists, each chosen for their expertise in different fields. Captain Alina Vasquez had commanded salvage operations in the asteroid belt for 15 years. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was Earth's leading expert on quantum mechanics, an alien technology. Dmitry Petrov could fix anything with moving parts, using whatever materials were available. Zara al-Rashid had earned her reputation by successfully hacking into systems that their creators claimed were impossible to breach. As their shuttle approached the docking bay, Marcus reviewed the briefing materials one more time. Humanity had been petitioning for membership in the Stellar Confederation for nearly 3 decades. The galaxy's major powers had finally agreed to grant them provisional status, which came with certain traditional benefits. New member species typically received technological assistance, trade agreements, and sometimes military support to help them establish themselves among the stars. The docking process took longer than expected, because their shuttle had to be thoroughly scanned for biological contaminants and primitive weapons. The security protocols were clearly designed for species that the Unfederation considered potentially dangerous or unpredictable. Marcus noted that the elegant vessels from established member worlds seemed to bypass most of these procedures entirely. The welcome ceremony took place in a vast chamber that could have housed several city blocks. The walls were made of some transparent material that showed the swirling colors of nearby nebulae. Gravity generators created different zones throughout the space, allowing species with various environmental needs to participate comfortably. Some delegates floated in bubbles of liquid methane, while others stood on platforms that rotated slowly to provide centrifugal force. High Chancellor Vextara of the Altarian Collective served as the Confederation's current leader. Her species resembled tall, graceful beings with silver skin and 4 arms that moved with liquid precision. When she spoke, her words were translated into perfect English by systems so advanced that they captured not just meaning, but emotional nuance. "We welcome the humans of Earth to our ancient brotherhood of civilized worlds," she announced, her voice carrying easily through the enormous chamber. "As is our custom, the Confederation presents new members with a gift to aid in their transition to galactic society." Marcus felt a moment of anticipation, wondering what kind of advanced technology they might receive. Other species had been given quantum computers, faster-than-light communication arrays, or even small fleets of modern starships. Humanity desperately needed any of those things to compete in the galactic economy. The holographic display that materialized in the center of the chamber showed something that made Marcus's heart sink. The ship looked like it had been cobbled together from spare parts by someone who had never seen a proper starship. The hull was a patchwork of different metals, with obvious repair welds covering large sections. Massive cargo bays dominated the design, but they were clearly empty and had been for some time. The engines were bulky and primitive, using technology that appeared to be several generations out of date. "We present to you the cargo vessel Rust Bucket." Chancellor Vextara continued with what the translators interpreted as warmth. This ship has served faithfully in the freight industry for over a century. While its technology may be considered basic by current standards, it represents a solid foundation upon which your species can build its spacefaring capabilities. Marcus heard barely suppressed sounds of amusement from some of the other delegations. The Kethmori representatives, whose species was known for their advanced engineering, were making clicking noises that their translators rendered as polite laughter. The crystalline consortium's delegate pulsed with colors that clearly expressed condescending sympathy. Captain Vasquez stepped forward to examine the technical specifications that appeared alongside the hologram. Her expression remained carefully neutral, but Marcus could see her jaw tighten as she reviewed the data. The ship's maximum velocity was less than half that of modern freight haulers. Its cargo capacity was decent, but the loading systems were completely manual. The life support equipment was functional but required constant maintenance using parts that were no longer manufactured. Dr. Tanaka was studying the power systems with the intensity of someone trying to solve a complex puzzle. The quantum reactors were an older design that most species had abandoned decades ago in favor of more efficient alternatives. The computer systems operated on principles that predated artificial intelligence by several technological generations. Even the hull plating was made from materials that the galaxy now considered obsolete. The vessel includes complete documentation, added another Confederation official, though we should mention that some of the technical manuals are written in languages of species that are no longer active in galactic affairs. This comment produced more sounds of amusement from the assembled delegates. Marcus realized that they were witnessing a carefully orchestrated humiliation. The Confederation was giving humanity their garbage and expecting gratitude in return. The message was clear. Humans were considered so primitive that even obsolete technology was more than they deserved. Dmitry Petrov had been quietly studying the hologram from multiple angles, his experienced eye taking in details that others might miss. He moved closer to Marcus and spoke in a voice too low for the translation systems to pick up. The frame structure is interesting. Modular design with universal connection points. Someone built this thing to be modified. Zara was examining the computer specifications on her personal tablet, cross-referencing them with databases she had downloaded before the trip. The processing cores are primitive, but they're also completely open architecture. No proprietary restrictions or built-in limitations. With the right modifications, this could actually be quite capable. Marcus felt something shift in his perspective as he looked at the ship again. The other species saw junk that they were generously disposing of through diplomatic channels, but his team was seeing something different. They were seeing raw materials, proven systems, and unlimited potential for modification. Most importantly, they were seeing a challenge. "We accept your generous gift with deep appreciation," Marcus announced, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "Humanity will honor the tradition of the Confederation by making the most of what we have been given." The silence that followed was broken only by the subtle hum of environmental systems. The assembled delegates had expected complaints about the inadequacy of the gift, or perhaps requests for additional assistance. Instead, the humans had accepted their cast-off with dignity and determination. Chancellor Vextara seemed momentarily surprised, but recovered quickly. "Excellent. The vessel will be delivered to your lunar shipyards within the standard period. We trust that it will serve your species well as you begin your journey among the stars." As the ceremony concluded and the various delegations began to disperse, Marcus noticed several groups of aliens engaged in animated conversations. The translation systems were too distant to pick up their words, but their body language suggested amusement mixed with curiosity about humanity's response. The journey back to Earth gave the team time to study the detailed technical specifications that the Confederation had provided. What they discovered over the next several days fundamentally changed their understanding of what they had been given. The ship was indeed old and primitive by galactic standards, but it had been built by a species that understood something most modern civilizations had forgotten. The original designers had created a vessel that was meant to evolve. Every major system was modular and replaceable. The whole structure used universal mounting points that could accept components from dozens of different manufacturers. The power distribution network was deliberately over-engineered to handle modifications. That drew more energy than the original systems. Even the computer architecture was designed to accept new programming languages and operating systems without requiring a complete overhaul. Dr. Tanaka made the most significant discovery while analyzing the quantum reactor specifications. The power cores were primitive, but they were also incredibly robust and fault-tolerant. Modern reactors were more efficient, but they required exotic materials and specialized maintenance facilities. The older design could be repaired with common metals and basic tools, making it perfect for a species that was still building its industrial infrastructure. Captain Vasquez found herself increasingly impressed with the ship's cargo systems. While they were manual rather than automated, they were also completely flexible. The loading bays could be reconfigured for different types of freight, converted into manufacturing spaces, or even transformed into additional crew quarters if necessary. The designers had prioritized adaptability over convenience. Dmitri was practically vibrating with excitement as he studied the mechanical systems. The ship's designers had built redundancy into every critical component, but they had done it using multiple different approaches rather than simply duplicating systems. If one method failed, there were always alternative ways to accomplish the same task. For someone who specialized in keeping machines running under impossible conditions, it was like discovering buried treasure. Zara's analysis of the computer systems revealed perhaps the most intriguing aspect of their new ship. The processing cores were slow by modern standards, but they were also completely transparent. There were no hidden protocols, no restrictions on modification, and no built-in obsolescence mechanisms. With enough work, she could potentially upgrade the system to rival anything in the Confederation fleet. As Earth grew larger in the viewport of their transport ship, Marcus felt a growing sense of anticipation rather than disappointment. The Stellar Confederation had given humanity a challenge disguised as charity. They expected the primitive humans to struggle with obsolete technology while purchasing proper equipment at prices that would bankrupt entire worlds. What they had actually done was provide Earth's most innovative engineers with the perfect platform for demonstrating what human ingenuity could accomplish when given the right raw materials. The galaxy was about to learn that there was a significant difference between junk and opportunity, and that humanity had been turning the former into the latter for their entire history. The rust bucket was about to become something that would surprise everyone involved, including the humans who were planning to rebuild it from the ground up. The transformation and first strikes, 6 months after the ceremony at Confederation headquarters. The lunar shipyards buzzed with activity that had never been seen before in human space. The rust bucket hung in the center of the largest construction bay, surrounded by scaffolding and work platforms that swarmed with engineers, technicians, and specialists from across the solar system. What had once been a derelict cargo hauler was rapidly becoming something that belonged in no existing category of spacecraft. Marcus Chen stood in the observation deck, watching as Dmitry Petrov's team installed the latest modification to the ship's hull. They were adding armor plating that had been salvaged from decommissioned Earth warships, creating a patchwork of different metals that told the story of human military history. Steel from ancient battleships was welded alongside titanium from the first generation of spacefighters, with newer ceramic composites filling the gaps where additional protection was needed. The transformation had begun with Dr. Tanaka's revolutionary modification to the power systems. Instead of replacing the primitive quantum reactors, she had found a way to network them with human fusion generators, creating a hybrid system that provided both the reliability of older technology and the raw power output needed for modern systems. The result was a power plant that could operate at 150% of its original capacity while maintaining the fault tolerance that made repairs possible with basic tools. Captain Vasquez had overseen the complete reconfiguration of the ship's interior spaces. The massive cargo bays had been converted into a combination of manufacturing facilities, crew quarters, and equipment storage. More importantly, she had implemented a modular design philosophy that allowed entire sections to be reconfigured. For different missions, the ship could function as a freighter, a research vessel, a mobile factory, or even a warship, depending on how its components were arranged. Zara's work on the computer systems had produced the most dramatic improvements. She had replaced the primitive processing core with a distributed network that combined human artificial intelligence with quantum computing principles. The result was a ship's brain that could learn, adapt, and make intuitive leaps that purely logical systems could never achieve. More importantly, it could interface seamlessly with human operators, creating a partnership between crew and machine that enhanced both. The weapon systems that had been installed over the past month violated every principle of civilized warfare as practiced by the Stellar Confederation. Instead of energy weapons that required exotic materials and specialized maintenance, human engineers had developed kinetic systems that used readily available resources. Magnetic railguns could accelerate projectiles to relativistic speeds using nothing more than electricity and metal slugs. Missile launchers fired rounds that could change direction mid-flight, powered by guidance systems that operated on pattern recognition rather than predetermined algorithms. The ship's new defensive systems were equally unconventional. Rather than energy shields that required constant power, human engineers had developed reactive armor that could absorb and redirect incoming attacks. The hull itself had been redesigned to shed damaged sections and reconfigure around critical systems, ensuring that the ship could continue fighting even after sustaining massive damage. As the modifications neared completion, reports began arriving from the outer colonies that would soon test everything the team had built. A new threat had emerged in the frontier regions, where heavily armed pirates were attacking shipping lanes and mining operations with unprecedented aggression. These weren't ordinary raiders looking for easy profits. They were organized, well-equipped, and seemed to be following a coordinated Essex strategy to disrupt commerce throughout the sector. The Stellar Confederation had dispatched several task forces to deal with the problem, using the same tactics that had worked against pirates for thousands of years. Fast patrol ships would hunt down the raiders while heavily armed cruisers protected the most valuable targets. The strategy was logical, well-planned, and completely ineffective against enemies who adapted their tactics faster than the Confederation could respond. Admiral Kethfer of the Confederation Defense Force had lost 3 squadrons in the past month alone, His ships were faster, more heavily armed, and crewed by experienced professionals who had trained at the galaxy's finest military academies. But the pirates seemed to anticipate every move, neutralizing superior technology with tactics that bordered on precognitive accuracy. Marcus received the emergency request for assistance on a Tuesday morning while observing the final tests of the ship's new systems. The Confederation was formally requesting that all member species contribute whatever resources they could spare to deal with the pirate crisis. For most worlds, this meant additional ships and crews to reinforce the existing fleet. For humanity, it represented an opportunity to demonstrate what they had accomplished with their unwanted gift. The newly christened Terra's Defiance launched from lunar orbit 3 days later, its departure watched by millions of people across the solar system. The ship looked nothing like the sleek vessels that filled Confederation fleets. It was bulky, asymmetrical, and covered with the kind of external modifications that made military engineers cringe. But it was also completely functional, crewed by specialists who understood every system because they had built or modified each one personally. The journey to the frontier took 2 weeks, during which the crew ran constant drills and simulations. Captain Vasquez had assembled a team of 75 people, each chosen for their ability to think creatively under pressure. They included former military personnel, civilian engineers, scientists, and even artists whose unconventional perspectives might prove valuable in unexpected situations. The first contact with pirates occurred in the Kepler system, where a mining convoy was under attack by 5 raider vessels. The pirates were using standard harassment tactics, staying mobile while wearing down the convoy's defenses with hit-and-run attacks. 3 Confederation patrol ships were already engaged, but they were being outmaneuvered by enemies who seemed to know their tactics better than they did themselves. Marcus watched the tactical display as Terra's Defiance approached the battle zone. The Confederation ships were beautiful examples of military engineering, with sleek hulls and perfectly symmetrical weapon arrays. They moved in precise formations, their attacks coordinated according to doctrine that had been refined over centuries of warfare. The pirates were responding exactly as that doctrine predicted, which was why they were winning. All stations, prepare for combat, Captain Vasquez announced over the ship's communication system. Remember, we're not trying to fight fair, we're trying to win. The first indication that something had changed came when Terra's Defiance opened fire at a range that should have been impossible for kinetic weapons. The railguns accelerated their projectiles to speeds that made them virtually invisible until impact. The lead pirate vessel simply disappeared in a cloud of expanding debris, its shields and armor providing no protection against solid matter moving at significant fractions of light speed. The remaining raiders immediately changed tactics, spreading out and trying to use their superior speed to avoid the newcomers' devastating weapons. This was exactly what human military doctrine expected them to do, which meant it was exactly what Terra's Defiance was prepared for. The ship's missile systems launched rounds that split apart mid-flight, creating fields of independently guided warheads that could adjust their trajectories to follow evasive targets. The battle lasted exactly 18 minutes. When it was over, the pirate squadron had been completely destroyed, while Terra's Defiance had sustained only minor damage to its outer armor plating. The Confederation patrol ships had watched the engagement with what their crews later described as professional shock. Unable to understand how a single modified cargo hauler had accomplished what their advanced warships could not. The after-action reports sent to Confederation headquarters described weapons systems that violated known principles of space combat. tactics that ignored established doctrine, and results that seemed impossible according to military science. Admiral Kethver requested detailed technical specifications for the human vessel, only to discover that most of its systems were classified using principles that Confederation computers could not analyze. The real impact of the battle became clear over the following weeks as news of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy. The species that had been given cast-off technology as a charitable gesture had turned it into something that could defeat enemies that had stymied the Confederation's finest warships. More importantly, they had done it using resources that were readily available and techniques that could be adapted to almost any situation. Chancellor Vextara received reports from intelligence services throughout Confederation space describing human engineering projects that were unlike anything in the Galactic database. They were building ships that combined technologies from multiple species with innovations that seemed to come from nowhere. Their manufacturing facilities were producing equipment that worked better than it should, using materials that other civilizations considered worthless. The follow-up engagements over the next month confirmed what the first battle had suggested. Terra's defiance was not a fluke or an accident. It was the product of a species that approached problems differently than anyone else in the galaxy. Where other civilizations saw limitations, humans saw opportunities for creative solutions. Where others saw obsolete technology, humans saw raw materials for innovation. By the time the pirate crisis had been resolved, 3 more human vessels had joined the Frontier Patrol. Each one was different, built using the same modular principles, but configured for specific mission requirements. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's approach to technology was fundamentally different from the established norm. They didn't just use tools. They improved them, adapted them, and combined them in ways that created capabilities that exceeded the sum of their parts. The Stellar Confederation had given humanity junk, expecting gratitude and dependence. Instead, they had provided the raw materials for a revolution in military technology that would change the balance of power throughout the galaxy. The humans had proven that innovation was more valuable than sophistication, and that determination could overcome any technological disadvantage. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. And that was exactly what Marcus Chen had hoped for when he accepted their unwanted gift with dignity and determination 6 months earlier.